And I'm taking that objectivity into myself so that when I feel an emotion, I'm feeling it, I'm looking at it, I'm experiencing it, and there's that separation. Huh? Every time I separate from something, I'm disidentifying. I'm relocating. I'm relocating where I think I am. Right? So you've got to relocate out of the body, relocate out of the sensations, feelings, emotions, relocate out of thought. See? Now, if I were going for this election next year, I'd be saying relocate, relocate, relocate. So this constant relocation, I'm finding another place in which I can find, shall we say, a different identity. And this identity I experience as being the observer, the feeler. It's a very strange place to be, because here I know what's happening. I feel an emotion. I can feel it. I can feel a sensation. I can know it. Huh? And yet somehow I'm not it. Huh? Now that's all the Buddha's pointing to when he's saying, not me, not mine. This is not me, not mine. And the fact that it arises and passes away is also pointing out it can't be me or mine, because one minute it's here and then it's gone. How could it be me? The idea of a me is something permanent, substantial, something that doesn't change. So the first position that we take in our meditation is that observer, that feeler. Right? We sort of lift ourselves out of the body-mind complex in order to discover this observation post. And all the noting we do, all the techniques that you come across in Vipassana, and the technique I myself am teaching is known as the Mahasi technique, but there are many others. And if you go into Zen or you go to Dzogchen, the Tibetan tradition, all these techniques are always trying to get the meditator to find this position, that's all. And from this position, you can get this objectivity. And these three characteristics, we've mentioned the two at the moment, this idea of impermanence and the fact that it's not me, not mine, becomes more and more apparent the more you practice it. Now, even though we get to this position of the observer, the knower, that's not your final position, because there's still something there that knows itself. Now, if I have a sense of presence, this is me, it's also an object, so I can't be that either. Now, everything that I'm aware of can't be the awareness that's aware of it. Huh? So even at that point, which we can get to by an act of will, we can put ourselves into the observation post, is not the end point. The end point is even when that sense of self disappears. And occasionally that may happen to you in little blits and blobs when you fall into an absorption state, where there's a sense of loss of a self, and yet when you come out of that state, you know that there has been a process of knowing, a process of seeing, a process of experience. Now, these I like to call little nibbanic moments, right? Even whether they're actually nibbana or not, let's not get into that discussion, but they're nibbanic moments in the sense that just for that one moment, we've lost the sense of self. Now, you might say to yourself, well, I do that when I watch a good film. Huh? When you sit and watch a good film, that's it, you're gone. You wake up 2 hours later and you say, that's a fantastic film. But you weren't aware of yourself watching the film while you were watching the film. There was a loss of self. Huh? But unfortunately, we enter into those absorptions with an intention which corrupts the actual process. And the intention is, I'm going to enjoy myself. And as soon as you do that, you form a relationship with films. The film now becomes something that your happiness is dependent on. So after you've seen one film, there comes in not too long a space afterwards, a thirst, a craving, an addiction to get another DVD. See? Or else life becomes meaningless. This is what I found, isn't it? So it's a case of recognizing that we're talking about two different levels of consciousness. Right? There's a level of knowing, a level of the way we relate to the world, which is seeking happiness in the world. Now, this is where we come to the other of the three characteristics, which the Buddha called dukkha. Dukkha it translates as a hard place. So we're in a hard place. And it's a hard place because we've made this wrong relationship. And this fundamental delusion that we suffer from expresses itself in a search for happiness in the sensual world. That's how it expresses itself. Having identified ourselves with the body, having identified ourselves with our emotional life and our thought life, we're now trying to make this inner environment the happiness that we seek. That's all. So when I'm feeling well, when I'm feeling really fit and I'm walking up a hill or something, then that's happiness. I made it, finally. See? Then I get to the top of the hill, and I've got to come down, and it all dribbles away. The body feels weak and tired, and I've got to have my orange juice. Emotionally speaking, I can create a situation. Say, I try and find the right sort of person who makes me happy, the right sort of situation, and I find myself in this beautiful emotional euphoria. Nature, sex, drugs, rock and roll, it's wonderful. So it's all, but unfortunately, as soon as I've got it, this emotion corrupts, it disappears, it falls away from me. See? But I still think that as long as I can just get the right thing, you know, right job, right relationship, right house, right car, I will be definitely perfectly happy. See? So this search for happiness in the world is producing that stress that we're suffering. Because we constantly want to be happy in a world which cannot deliver, if only because it passes away. Now, to let go of that is the process of renunciation. To begin to let go of that as a place to find happiness is the process of renunciation. Now, renunciation isn't self-mortification in the sense that we're not trying to beat ourselves up. For heaven's sake, we're suffering enough. Right? What we're trying to do is to let go of our attachment to things. Right? And we do that by, through this meditation, beginning to realize what desire is. So the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, it begins with a very simple statement. Life is dukkha. It's a hard place. And the reason it's a hard place, he says, is because of a certain type of desire. It's a desire based on seeking happiness in the sensual world. And then he says, if you can get rid of that, you will actually come to the end of this dukkha. You'll actually come to a position in yourself where there is no more unsatisfactoriness, no more suffering, and you live, in his words, in contented and with it happy. Right? When somebody complains to him and says, look, this training is very difficult, he says, well, it is difficult, but then people achieve this wonderful state, nibbana. And the guy says, nibbana, so what? So the first thing is when you get there, he says, you are contented and with it happy. He's describing himself. So remember that the enlightenment or the liberation is not a destruction of what we have, but a refinement of what we have. When the Buddha is finally liberated, he doesn't turn into this sort of amorphous blob, you know, sitting under a tree with enlightenment, sort of glowing, you know, but unable to speak, like he's lost in nibbanic bliss forever. It's not. He gets up, he walks, he talks, he relates. And the Buddha heart is these illimitables, right, which we'll practice this afternoon. Love, compassion, joy, and peace. That's his heart, you see. And his intellect, what had been such a barrier to actually seeing the things the way they are. I mean, that's why, remember, in our meditation, we're constantly dragging ourselves down into the body to get back to basic experience away from conceptual thinking. Remember that concepts always hold our history. So whenever we experience something, we're always dumping our history on what we're experiencing. So that's why whenever you eat an apple, it's always compared with the last apple or the apples you ate. And it's either rubbish or brilliant or whatever. But actually the apple is just an apple. And to taste the apple this apple that I'm tasting, as in its individuality, I have to forget all history. And to do that, I place my attention just in the eating, just on the tongue. See?